I've just got a Raspberry Pi 5 that I'm going to use as the controller for my DCC layout. Can't be too hard to set up, can it? Before I actually get into the details of the video, I just want to say a big thank you to Andrew at SPROG DCC for all his help. I picked up a slightly older video showing how to set up the Raspberry Pi 5, and it was trying to solve an issue with the UART settings, which have actually now been resolved in JMRI 5.6. Unfortunately, I was using the fix for the bug, which in itself then was causing a bug. But Andrew very quickly responded, was able to point me in the right direction to the right videos and things, to the updated videos, which means that everything is now working, where before I was having problems getting the Raspberry Pi to actually talk to the SPROG 3 board. Before we get into the programming of the Raspberry Pi and setting it up, I just wanted to give you a brief overview of the hardware I'm using. This is the Pi SPROG 3 Plus board. Two connections, one for main, one for programming track, which is very useful, and that's what those leads are for. Then this is the Raspberry Pi 5 over here. This will sit on top of that using the GPIO pins, and of course you need a micro SD card. That's where we'll be installing the Raspberry Pi OS system and doing our updates. So the starting point for the update of the Raspberry Pi 5 is to get the latest version of the Raspberry Pi OS, and that can be quite easily done. If you go to the Raspberry Pi website and to the download areas, you will find there is a small program that can be a Raspberry Pi installer. So as you can see, it's available for Mac, for Windows, and I'm using a Mac. So what we do is we download that. So once it's there, we can open the image. Being on a Mac, all I have to do is drag that into and put it into the application folder. Then once I've done that, I can close this, and in fact that file can go. Then if I open the application folder, you'll see I've got the Raspberry Pi imager just there. So the first thing to do, we select the Raspberry we're actually concerned with. So I've got a Raspberry Pi 5 in this case. Then we want to choose the operating system. I'm going to go for the 64-bit, and again it should be the latest version. And then we choose where it's going to write to, and I've already got the SD card installed in the computer, and that's where it is. So then click on next. Now there are some settings. I've obviously used these before, but what you can do, you can give the Pi a name if you like. In this case I've called it Wooten Talk Prog. You've got a username. The standard is Pi, and you can actually change that name if you want to, but I'm using this very limited. I'm not going to have multiple users, so Pi is fine. I've already put a password in. Then I've got the information. I've ticked that I want to connect to my home Wi-Fi. Again, the password for the home Wi-Fi. The other thing we need to do is just go to services and make sure that SSH is enabled, because that's what we'll use originally to talk to the Raspberry, because it doesn't have a screen connected or a keyboard. So I'll want to do that over through the Wi-Fi. So once we've done all that, we save it, and then the next thing is we want to write that to the card. So say yes. Of course it will, as usual, warn me that it's overwriting things again. I say yes. So I click on yes. Mac again comes in with a bit of security, so we just enter the Mac password for that, and away it goes. So once we've created the SD card, put onto it the latest version of Raspberry Pi operating system, obviously we then can just put it into a Raspberry, apply power to the Raspberry, and then we can allow it to connect to the Wi-Fi. Like I said, I'd set it up to connect to my home Wi-Fi, so I'll now be able to talk to it wirelessly through the network using SSH. And to do that, the first thing I'm going to do is open a terminal window on Mac. So we use SSH to Pi at Wooten Talk Prog. .local, which is the name. Now, we do sometimes get this. This is because I've done this a few times, and that's because I've got an issue with security. And what I need to do is just go into my .ssh known hosts within the Mac and delete that file. And this time, now it comes back and tells us that it can't be established. That's fine. The fingerprint is that. This key is not being known by any other name. So it's just the security thing. So what I want to say, yes, I want to continue. And then I enter the password that I created for the Raspberry Pi itself. And having done that, we're now actually talking and looking at the Raspberry Pi. Now, usually the first thing I do after I've updated or created an SD card is go ahead and just see have I got the latest software. So to do that, I enter sudo apt get update, and it's gone away and found some packages which it's going to fetch. So it's found a number of packages that still need to be updated. And so having done that, we do apt get upgrade. Now this will take a few minutes, or could take a little while as it runs through. Yes, I do want to continue, so I let it continue. So I'm going to let that run, and then we'll come back to the next steps afterwards. Once we've gone through the process of updating all the software on the Raspberry Pi, there are a few other things that need to be done, so I'll just run through them now using the screen. The first thing we're going to do is, having updated the software, it's a good idea to reboot the Pi. So we'll start by doing that, and it usually has to be a super user do reboot, and that'll go away and restart the Pi for us. Once again, log back in. Now, to do some of these next changes, I'm going to use the Raspberry Pi configuration program. So again, and that will start this program. So here we want to go down to the interface options. We go to VNC. Yes, I want VNC enabled, so I can do that. Having enabled VNC on the Raspberry Pi, I can now access the Raspberry Pi using the VNC viewer on the Mac. So to do that, I basically start the VNC viewer, and then I connect on the connection through to Wooten Tor Prog, and it will come up with the desktop, and there we are. Now, there are a couple of things I want to do. First of all, I'm going to go into the Raspberry Pi and down to the preferences and down to the Pi configuration. And the display, well, I'd actually like it to be 1920, so that. The other thing I'm going to do is the interface. I'm going to enable the serial port, because that's what we're going to use later to talk to our Pi SPROG Plus 3 board. So the thing is, having done that, I need to then restart things. So I let it restart. The Raspberry Pi itself should go away and restart. And then I can connect back to it using the VN viewer. Now, once we've done this, it means we can start doing things on the Raspberry Pi itself using its desktop and things. So having rebooted the Raspberry Pi, having changed those settings, we've got one or two other things we can do that are going to make it easier for us later on. One of the things is there is an issue apparently with the Chromium. So to fix the speed, what I'm going to do is add an extra line into the command line file. So to do that, I do sudo nano boot command line dot text. So I'm going to do video equals HDMI A1 colon, and then we put in the resolution that we set earlier. And of course we need the space. So that's just to make sure, just to help with this apparent issue with the Chromium. So once we've entered the information, we're going to write the file out, and then we can control and exit. The issue I had earlier that I mentioned with the UARTs was on the older versions of JMRI you had to set the pins 16 and 17 manually, which you don't have to do that anymore. But what you do have to do is make sure that in the config file there is a correct section for overlaying those pins. So again, we open up a terminal window, which I will again make a bit bigger. And this time we do sudo nano, and again we're going to edit the config file. Now right at the bottom of this file, under all, what we want to do in here is put dt overlay equals UART0 CTS RTS. So that's to make sure that the overlay works for our Pi SPROG board later. So I've done that. Once again, we write it out and we can exit, and then I can exit from the terminal window. Now the next thing I want to do before I start downloading JMRI etc. is I want to make sure I've got Java in the system. I'm going to go to the Azul website. Then I'm going to go to download now. I'm going to go to choose the file I want. Now I'm going to, in this case, get Java 11. So I'm going to go here, select Java 11 on the, it's for Linux. I want the 64-bit ARM. I want the I want the GRE file, and then I'm going to download the .deb file, and that will now go and download for me. You see the information here being downloaded. Also, Azul website has instructions what to do, and there they are, and I will now, could easily follow those if needs be. So this is now downloaded, it's in the downloads folder. So again, go back to my terminal window. If I actually change to the downloads folder and ls what's in there, I will see the file that I've just downloaded. What I want to do is now install that. So I do sudo apt install, and then you do the file that we've just downloaded. And I select that, and as usual we get information, and of course it comes to yes, so I say yes, and then hopefully it'll go away and install that, and there we go, there's the progress of it installing Java for me. Having downloaded Java, I'm now in position to actually start using JMRI. So I go to the JMRI website and can therefore go to the releases section. And then what I'm going to do is get the latest production release. So I go to there, and then I'm getting it for Linux. So I click on that and it'll download the JMRI file for me. Sorry, getting a bit tongue-tied there. Which will take a short while. And then once it's done, it'll be again in my downloads area. And I'll be able to then expand it and start hopefully using it. At least showing that it works. So there we are, it's downloaded. So I'm going to close the web browser, open the file manager, go to my downloads folder, and there's JMRI. So I'm going to select that, and I'm going to extract it to, and I'm going to tell where I want to extract it to, which is basically home-pi. So and the other thing you need to make sure is that this box is ticked to ensure a containing directory. So having expanded or extracted JMRI, it's then, as I said, being put into the JMRI folder here. If I go to that folder, I can just run Decoder Pro. So if I do that, it'll maybe take a second or two. There we are. That's Decoder Pro starting up. and I'm going to just cancel out of that at the moment. So the next thing I want to do is create a couple of desktop icons. First thing we do is we go to desktop. We then create a new file. In this case I'm going to call it decoder pro.desktop. And we're going to create another one which will be the panel pro. So again, a new file, panel pro.desktop. So what we need to do then is edit them. So we start by making a desktop entry. We take the type is application, and just check on my notes to make sure I'm doing the right thing here. The next thing after application is encoding. That's equal to UTF-8. Then the name is Decoder Pro. Put a comment in. It's the JMRI Decoder Pro. Then the icon is Home PI under the JMRI folder, under resources. In this case, it is Decoder pro.gif. Then the executable again is in the home Pi JMRI folder. In this case it's Decoder Pro. And then we finish off with terminal equals false. And we can save that. And you'll notice that now we've got the icon up here with the Decoder Pro. The other thing I'm going to do is if I copy all of this, to copy, and then if I open this Panel Pro, which I hope I've opened, yep, there it is, it's hidden behind there, then I can paste the text in into Panel Pro Desktop. Now of course what I need to do here is change decoder to panel. I think the GIF file for the Panel Pro is actually like that. So we save that, and then we can exit out of our editor, and now we've got two desktop icons that when we select them will run the relevant programs. I'm not going to do it at the moment because what I want to do is close the Raspberry Pi down. I want to attach the board onto the Raspberry Pi, and then I'll come back and run them, and then we can configure them to use the right things. I've now put the Pi SPROG board onto the Raspberry Pi so I can talk to it. So what I'm going to do now is run Decoder Pro and Panel Pro and configure them to actually talk to the board. So the first thing we do is if I double click on the Decoder Pro, it should start up. There we go. I'm going to make a new profile, and this profile is going to be Wooten Tour Prog. I say OK for that. Then I say OK, and then it's follow it through. Just follow the screens. Now here we're going to go down and use the DCC Generation 5. The board here is the Pi SPROG 3 Plus. Then we should connect to this TTY AM-A0, and then we do next. And that's it. We should now be connected and talking to our board. The other thing I want to do is I want to edit the preferences so that when decoder starts, I also want the Wi-Fi throttle to start, so I do that. I'm also going to give it a different name. Instead of calling my JMRI Railway, I'm going to call it Wootton Tor Prog. Save those, and it'll probably, so we restart. Now what we should see is on the restart, and there we are, there's the Wi-Fi throttle coming up, and I should find, yep, there we are. I can talk to my board, I can set the power on and set the power off on the board. So I'm sending instructions down now to the Pi SPROG board. What I'll be able to do is connect to the Raspberry Pi over my Wi-Fi network. And the other thing I can now do is I can create rosters. Actually, I can download the roster from my other JMRI system and run the phone. So that basically is getting things running. Now, the one thing I haven't done yet is make it so that JMRI starts automatically when the Pi starts. The simplest way of doing this is actually to move one of the desktop icons into the auto start folder in etc xdg. So that's just showing you what's in the auto start folder. Now if I go up a couple of levels, you have to type things correctly for it to work. And I want that to go to etc x auto. We will now hopefully see, yes, there is Decoder Pro desktop in there. So when we start up the system, that will run, it will run the Wi-Fi throttle, and we'll be able to access it over the internet. So if I exit from there, now if we do a reboot and let it give it a minute or two, allow it to start automatically. But there we go. So you can see Decoder Pro has started, as has, oh, where's the Wi-Fi throttle gone? Oh, there it is. Wi-Fi throttle behind it. So there we are. That's Raspberry Pi 5 set up, ready to go. I can use it in anger now and try it out. Hopefully that's been helpful as a video. Obviously I've collected stuff off the internet, YouTube, and again particularly thanks to Andrew from SPROG DCC for his help, just correcting me on that UART issue that I was having. As always, if you've got comments, questions, please get in touch, send them to me, and I'll see you again in my next video, whenever that might be. Bye.